So when fifth grade was over, my parents decided that I would go back to California. And I remember being excited about that because I had this new opportunity to basically start over fresh. I was looking forward to starting school and making friends, and I was really happy about that. But it wasn't before very long that I started to realize that the kids, they don't seem to like me. I struggled to make friends and to fit in. By the time eighth grade rolled around, I had already started using drugs and alcohol because some of the kids that I looked up to, they invited me to come do so. And I was like, yeah, I'm cool. I've done drugs. I'm drinking alcohol. Let's go. And, that was when I started using drugs and smoking cigarettes. And by the time I was halfway through high school, about 16 years old, I was already addicted to meth. I was taking pills, anything I could get my hands on. All along, I was hiding it from my parents. They didn't have any idea. And I'll never forget Christmas morning of 2004. I heard a knock on my bedroom door, and it was my little sister. David, wake up, there's presents. The first thing I do is I roll over, I open my drawer, I pull out this little baggie of crystal meth that I have. I pour some on the table. I crush it up. And I take a little dollar bill and I snort a line of meth, a crystal meth. It was like Christmas morning is one of those times that kids look forward to all year. And it's like that one of the happiest, mornings you're supposed to have. At least that was what I thought. But in order for me to be able to enjoy that now, I had to get high first. I had to take that bump of crystal just to be able to get out of bed and go have Christmas morning with my family. Well, by the time senior year rolled around, I was barely passing. So my parents sent me to a military academy where, a boarding school where I would finish up senior year. And that was a good place for me because it was run by the Army. We marched everywhere. We wore uniforms. They were really big on discipline, and it was a good experience. And in fact, I finished my senior year of high school with a 4.0. Now, they kind of force you to study and make good grades. You don't really have an option, but I was proud of that. And I'll never forget the day that I graduated. There was a bunch of people there, and my best friend from high school was there. My dad was there, and I remember hearing my dad yell for me when I walked across the stage, and I was happy. I was proud. I felt like I'd done something with my life. Now, I moved back home, and after not too long, maybe a few weeks, I started kind of hanging out with some of the old people again. I started using drugs again and drinking again. It wasn't before long that I got kicked out, and I became homeless. And over the next 5 or 6 months, I would kind of stay with people where I could. I would sleep on people's floors, in people's cars. I would steal food just to eat because I didn't have a job. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a car or anything like that. And I was basically just living off of people because I didn't have anything. And before too long, I kind of burnt all my bridges and I didn't really have anywhere else to stay. And so I ended up staying with this crack cocaine dealer for a few nights. And one night we were in this hotel. I'm sitting in the corner, and I'm helping him chop up his rocks and put them into little baggies. And I hear a knock on the door. And we look at each other, and my heart starts racing. He walks over through the door. He looks through the people. I don't think he saw anybody, but he opens the door, and in walk these two grown men, these Hispanic guys that they were wearing suits. I remember they were wearing suits, but their hands were tattooed, their necks and their faces were tattooed. And they grab him. And as they're forcing him out the door, I can hear him begging for his life. And one of them says something along the lines of, "You messed with the wrong person's money." They force him into the car. And I'm sitting there shaking. And one of them walks over to me. He looks me in the eyes and he says, "We're going to be watching this building. And if you try to leave, we're going to kill you." And he gets up and he turns around and he walks out. I'm sitting there shaking, trembling with fear. I mean, completely panicked. And I just sit there. And before too long, I stand up and I start walking around, and I realize I can't stay here. I'm a loose end. These guys may come back and take me, or worse. So I walk into the bathroom and I try to see if I can fit out this window, but I can't. So I walk over to the window and I look through the window and I can't see much because it's dark. It's really late at night. And so I open the door and I peek down the kind of sidewalk. I don't see anybody, so I'm tiptoeing along the side of this building. And just as I make it to the road, I look over and I see them in their car, and they see me. And then I took off. I ran as fast as I could, and I ran to the next city over, where my grandmother was recovering from a stroke. And I walk into her room and she's unconscious, and I just collapsed to the floor. I was bawling my eyes out. What have I become? What's happening to me? And I just cried and I cried. And I cried some more all night long. And I just started to realize that I can't keep living this way. I'm going to end up dead if I keep living this way. I never wanted to listen to anybody. I never took anybody's advice. There were a few people who cared about me and wanted to help me, but I didn't care what they had to say. I wanted to do it all on my own. I wanted things my way. And look what I've become. Look what that's got me. And I called my dad the next morning and I said, Dad, can I please come home? I'm going to sign up for the military. I need to fix this. And he let me come home. And in less than 2 weeks, I was off to Marine Corps boot camp. And so I turned this corner where, had I stayed living this way, I would have ended up in jail. I would have ended up dead. It was a dead-end road. But I hit this point where I surrendered. I said, enough. I can't take this anymore. I can't keep living this way. And so I decided to make a change. So I signed up for the military and I served for 4 years, and it was 4 of the best years of my life because I fit in there. I made a bunch of friends, and I went on a couple combat tours to Iraq and Afghanistan. And, I barely survived my time in Afghanistan. I actually got blown up while I was out there by a roadside bomb, but I survived. And after that incident, I decided, well, it's time for me to get out of the military now. I've been to Iraq, I've been to Afghanistan. I'm trying to live and I'm trying to do something with my life. So I decided to get out, but I will always fondly look back upon my time in the service because it completely changed my life. And a lot of my best friends are guys that I served with. And it was, like everything, it had its ups and its downs, but more than anything, it saved my life and it got me off the streets and it changed the trajectory of my life. Now, when I got out, I moved back to California because I was going to start going to school. My buddy that I went to high school with, he was living there, so I ended up moving in with him and his girlfriend, and I started going to school. And for a while, things were great. I was going to all these college parties and smoking weed all the time and drinking, going out to the bars, and I was really enjoying myself. I thought I was having a great time. I wasn't doing so good in school, but I wasn't doing terrible. But as time went by, as the years went by, I kind of grew sick of the same old going out 3 nights a week, getting drunk all the time. I started to have a lot of anxiety and depression, and I was having trouble sleeping. And more than anything, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I couldn't figure it out. And I had so much fear over picking something because I was like, what what if I make the wrong choice? What if I start doing this and I'm not happy? And I started to take on this idea that the only way that I'm going to be happy is if I become rich. So I started to study business and entrepreneurship, and I really began to take on this idea that in order for me to be happy, I have to be rich. That was just what I believed. And not only that, but I had this idea that in order for me to truly get all the girls and to be cool, I need people to think that I have it all together. So I stuffed down the way that I really felt in order to try to impress people, because more than anything, I was still struggling with my self-esteem and my view of myself. I really kind of had this idea that if people only knew who I really was, or the things that I've really done, or the fact that I wasn't popular in high school, they wouldn't want anything to do with me. And I truly believed that. So I lived my life constantly trying to project this image and this persona that I had, and making people think that I had it all together. So from the outside, I looked like I had it pretty good. I was 23 years old. I was actually making good money. I was making about $100,000 a year at the time, but I was living paycheck to paycheck. And not only that, but I would often overdraft my account just to be able to go to the bar and pay for bottle service, because I always wanted to be impressing people. I always wanted to be making people think that I was cool, because I derived my sense of self-worth from what other people thought of me. So I'm always scanning the environment. What can I do in order to win the approval or to get that next pat on my back? It was a nonstop game of always trying to keep this image that I had created for myself suspended in air. So people, when they saw me, they saw this shiny object over here. They didn't see me. I wanted them to see the nice car or to see the nice clothes. And I really thought that that was who I was. And I struggled to let people in on my world, because as I said before, I truly had this belief that if people knew who I really was, how I really felt, the things that I've done, the fact that I wasn't popular back in high school or that I was homeless, I thought that if people knew these things, that they wouldn't want anything to do with me. And I firmly believed that. And so I was very inauthentic and very, I guess you could say, manipulative with people. And I really struggled to find that sense of belonging, because no matter how many pats on the back you get, or no matter how many attaboys you get, at the end of the night, when you're laying down in bed and you're staring up at the ceiling and you're in your own mind, and you know that all of these accolades, all this stuff, all these things that people are saying, that it's built upon this pretense that you've created, it really means nothing. So you can have all of the friends in the world, but you might be the loneliest person alive because you're not truly connected with people. And that was something I struggled with for a long time. And so I was living my life. I was constantly trying to be flashy. I was spending all my money. There was too much month left at the end of the money. That's a saying I heard one time. Too much month left at the end of the money. And even though I was making good money for my age, it was gone like that. I was always spending it, always trying to impress people. And that was the way I was living my life. But I was very lonely. I didn't have any purpose. I didn't have any idea of who am I going to become. And as I said, on the outside, I looked like I had it all together. But on the inside, I felt like I was dying. Truly, I was so lonely, and I had just anxiety and trouble sleeping. I just didn't know what I was going to do with myself. I was just lost. And one day I was studying in a coffee shop, and out of nowhere, I was approached by this man who saw what I was studying, and he was like, "Hey, are you an accountant?" I said, "No, I'm just studying for an accounting class." But there was something about him that made me say, "Hey, can I have a cup of coffee with you?" So we sit down and we start talking, and he tells me a little bit about himself. And as we're talking, I start getting this idea that, wow, there's something special about this guy. So after our conversation, I went back to my desk where I was studying, and I actually wrote him a page-long letter. I don't remember what it said, but it was something along the lines of, hey, thank you for your time, and I'd love to meet with you again. I feel like you would be a good person to have in my life. And so as on my way out, I hand him this letter, and the next day I get a text from him, and he's an older gentleman, but I get a text from him saying, hey, thanks for the letter. I'd like to invite you over tonight. I was like, awesome. And I had this idea that this guy was going to become maybe like a business mentor to me. So I get to his house, pull up, and I'm like, wow, this guy's a beautiful home. And it's funny because I texted a few of my friends, and I was like, hey, I met this guy. I think he's cool. But here's the address that I'm going to be at. So if you don't hear from me in a few hours, send the police here because I think this guy's cool, but we're going to see. I step into this house, and wow, immediately I felt at peace. There was something serene and peaceful about this home. And I thought that this guy was going to teach me how to get rich. It was obvious that he had done very well for himself, but he was also the most humble and kind and sincere person I'd ever met. And what started off as me thinking this guy was going to teach me how to become rich began this journey of this guy helping me to understand what was possible for me and who I was and what was possible when I began to work on myself and to spend time reading and working on improving myself and developing the qualities and the traits that lead someone in the direction of prosperity. And when I say prosperity, I don't just mean financially. That was part of it, but what he taught this genius of a man, one of the most incredible people I've ever met, was how to develop a life of richness in your relationships, of richness in the work that you do, financial freedom. I mean, he taught me so much, and he began me on this journey of self-discovery where I now started to see myself for what was possible for me. And I began shifting from this mindset of, I don't know what I'm going to do and being lost to, okay, now I have a path. And I trust this man. I mean, just look at the fruit that he's bared. Look at what this guy's accomplished. Look at the businesses he's created. And he changed my life. I thank God for bringing this man in my life because before I met him, I really struggled. And I was lost and I was confused. I was depressed. But after I met this man, I started down this new path. I took a turn in my life and I began this new journey. I began to believe in myself. And it wasn't always pretty. It wasn't just peachy and easy. There were things that happened. I went through this cancer thing that completely knocked me off guard, and I got ran over by this SUV going over 50 miles an hour, put me in the hospital and broke multiple bones in my body, and I got stuck in these ruts where I felt like I was trapped. But I never gave up. I never gave up. And I never lost sight of the fact that even though it may get hard, even though things are going to happen, when you put one foot in front of the other and you keep going, things change. Life begins unfolding for you in certain ways, and things begin to happen that you just never saw how these things could come together, but next thing you know, things are happening. And, at the place where I'm at in my life, I feel like I still have a long way to go, but I thank God for bringing this person into my life who helped me turn a corner to where I'm now pursuing a career as a speaker. I am passionate about reading and learning, and I have these desires to really help people, to help my family, to buy my mother a home, and to be someone who makes a difference in the world, who helps people. For so long, all I cared about was helping myself. What can I get for me? But as I've grown and continued down this journey, I've started to realize that the success isn't in what I can get for me. The success is in what can I do for others? How can I help other people? And developing that mentality, it completely changed my life. And now I experience life differently. And it's not perfect, but it's better. And it continues to get better. And the more focused I become on committing myself to this path and staying on this journey, surrounding myself with the right kinds of people, and continuing to develop myself, the more opportunities and possibilities I understand are available for my life and for my future. And life has completely changed for me. All because this man walked into my life. And leading up until this person, I had rejected outside influence. I didn't want people telling me how to live my life. But when I finally surrendered that mindset and I said, you know what? I'm going to put my faith in this person. I'm going to believe them. It completely changed my life. And now because of that experience, where for so long I rejected people trying to help me, I rejected that outside influence trying to speak truth into my life. I wanted to do it all on my own. But when I finally accepted help, and I put my faith and my trust in another individual, my life began to transform. And I still have a long ways to go. I'm still on this journey. By the grace of God, I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm still standing, and I still am putting one foot in front of the other. Even though sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's faster than others, but because I refuse to give up, life continues to unfold for me. And I'm grateful for that.